to us. Thanks, Susanna, for that. It's quite an involved passage. So I'd just like to just extract just a few sayings from it, if I may, and just try and apply it to us. So the first phrase I would like is at the very beginning, where some people come up to Jesus and say, I think it was they came, Philip. So these came. There were some Greeks, it says, came to Philip, who was from Bethesda, and asked him, "Sir, we wish to see Jesus. We would like to see Jesus." What a great quotation is that. And I wonder, what was their motive? Why did they want to see Jesus? Did they want to have a private conversation with him? Did they just want his autograph? What was it that they wanted to see Jesus for? Did they have, and again, what was their expectation? Did they have something that they wanted Jesus to do for them, to go somewhere, to help them in some way, to ask him a knotty theological problem or the meaning to life, whatever it might be? What was their expectation when they said they wanted to see Jesus? And I like the question because I think throughout church history and even today, "we would like to see Jesus" sums up what many Christians long for. We would like to see Jesus. But often Jesus seems to be invisible or absent or missing. And we often wonder, we would like to see Jesus because, like the hymn says, Jesus can help us. What a friend we have in Jesus. So we would like to see our friend turn up. We would like to see Jesus. And I'm sure that's true in Holy Trinity as in many other churches. We would like to see Jesus. And then Jesus talks about this rather phrase, man, because the hour has come, he says, for the Son of Man to be glorified. The hour has come. Now, in John's language, because this is taken from John's Gospel, the hour has come, meaning it was the right time. The divine timing has arrived for the Son of Man to be glorified. Now, the Son of Man was Jesus's favorite phrase to describe himself. It occurs only on the lips of Jesus in the New Testament, apart from once. And that's in the book of Acts when Stephen is being martyred. And in his vision, just before he gets martyred, he says, "I see the Son of Man standing at the right hand of God." But apart from that, all the other times, Son of Man is always Jesus talking about himself. And it's a deliberately ambiguous phrase because it could be filled with all kinds of meaning. It was a phrase originally taken from Daniel chapter 7, and therefore it had some kind of meaning, but it could be filled with its own unique meaning, which is what Jesus did. So it's a reference to himself. And they began to understand this. It's time, the hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. Now, the disciples were quite right to understand glorified as in a very positive way, but not to understand crucified. Because glorified was a very positive, wonderful, oh yes, we like that idea, a bit of glorification. Oh yes, I'll have a bit of that, thank you. But to be crucified, that's not what was on the agenda for anybody. And of course, we're going to see that in a minute. But so often we have an expectation, perhaps, that the friend we have in Jesus is just all about being glorified, is comforting us, is helping us, and makes no demands upon us. But of course, that is not the case. So Jesus talks then about, unless a grain of wheat falls into the ground and dies, it remains alone. Now, we know that's true because we plant our seeds, don't we? And this is the time of year we begin to get the garden, if we've got one ready. Things are beginning to spring up. So it's quite an appropriate image here. And we understand that when we plant a seed, the seed itself dies. It sort of withers away, but out of it comes something brand new. And Jesus is here, clearly is referring to himself. And clearly by what he's saying is that Jesus must die to bring about the new life that he had promised. The new wine or whatever it was back, when he did the wedding at Cana. Jesus must die to bring life. And I think that is a spiritual principle for us all, that only by dying does life come about. It's only but when we give our lives in service to others, I put there, only by spending our lives do we retain it. It's only when we give ourselves in the service of others is life released and life is vitalized. And often, I remember David Watson, who many of you I'm sure will know of, he used to say, if you think your church is lacking love, give your love. If your church is lacking life, give your life. Because we are the church. We can't point our fingers at them because we are the church. So unless, as it were, we give ourselves in service to each other, then there will be no life at all. Only by service comes true greatness, said Jesus. And then, of course, he goes on to say, my heart is troubled. And obviously that is going to be taken up further when we get into Gethsemane. But very quickly in John's Gospel, we get into Gethsemane and the prayer that Jesus has about not my will, but yours be done. My heart is troubled. There is a great hesitancy about what is coming towards Jesus. And obviously this time next week, it's Palm Sunday. And in 2 weeks today, it's Easter Sunday. But obviously we have Good Friday, as we said, in between. So there's great hesitancy on the behalf of Jesus because he knows and feels and senses what is coming to him. My heart is troubled, but it's only going through this that we see God's glory. And it said there that God spoke to Jesus when these things happened, and there was a different interpretation on it. So can I find it? I've lost my Bible passage here. So, oh yes. Father, glorify your name. Then a voice from heaven came from heaven. I have glorified it, and I will glorify it again. The crowd that stood there and heard it said that it had thundered. Others said, an angel has spoken to him. So according to John's Gospel, God actually speaks. I have glorified your voice. There's an audible voice. And some in the crowd said it thundered. Oh, what was that? Was it thunder? God speaks, but I think there is, if you like, a rule that there are always natural explanations for supernatural events. Very rarely, if ever, are there naked miracles of God intervening. When we say God answers our prayer, somebody can just as well say, well, it might have happened anyway. Or it was just a coincidence, or whatever it might be. And that is not, therefore, to say that that event wasn't necessarily divine, God-inspired, because there are always natural explanations for supernatural events. That's happened to Jesus. You know, just in the first miracle in John's Gospel is the water into wine. And of course, the first natural explanation of it was by the captain, the steward of the wine. Oh, you've kept the best till last. It's not a miracle. You've just kept back the best wine until now. And there are always natural explanations for supernatural events. And I have found this to be the case when I've talked about the Christian faith to others. It's always ambiguous. We can always explain something else in a different way. And that is where faith comes in, because we believe that it was God speaking to us in that way, even though someone else might look at the same event and have a completely different understanding. And I think that is quite a helpful way that God, when it said that, the crowd said it thundered. And then Jesus talks about that he would be lifted up from the earth. That's when he would be glorified. And that's why the disciples got into confusion, because they thought, oh, glorified, that's wonderful. I like that. But crucified, no. Well, he would be glorified when he was lifted up from the earth. Now, that could refer just in ordinary language, you are lifted up in the actual act of crucifixion. You are hoisted up on the gallows and left nailed to a cross, or if you were physically lifted up when you were being hung, you were lifted up from the earth. It was a reference to his death. But of course, we also know that when Jesus was lifted up, it also has a reference to being exalted, being raised up on high, and therefore to Jesus's resurrection and ascension. So this idea in John's Gospel of being lifted up has this double-edged sword of being physically crucified, but also exalted at the same time. And then he says, when I am lifted up, Jesus says, I will draw all men to myself. In the context of all men is a reference to both the Greeks and the Jews, if you look at the actual reading itself. So Jesus will draw all people to himself. And the word I want to look at there is the word draw. If you are drawn to something or someone, it's because they are attractive in some way. They arouse your interest, your curiosity. Oh, I'm quite drawn to that painting when you go into a museum. Oh, look at this, I'm drawn to that painting or that music or whatever it might be. There's something about it that attracts me. I wonder whether the same is true of the person of Jesus. I know the church, and by that I mean the established organization, is often not very attractive. Safeguarding issues, abuse, unpleasant people within it, all kinds of things we can easily say are not particularly attractive. But the person of Jesus, many people do find attractive. Many of us might be drawn to go into churches. Personally, I love going into a village church in the middle of nowhere and just sitting down and listening and hearing and exploring it. It's lovely. I am attracted, sad person that I am, to village churches. Even worse, I'm attracted to graveyards. I like wandering around a nice village graveyard, reading the epitaphs. But hey, that's just me. So I'm sorry about that. But we can be attracted to places, can't we? And we might have been a place and we really love it. It's our favorite place or the viewpoint. I wonder, in what way do we find Jesus attractive? Is it the welcome that he gives? Is it the fact that he's a friend that we just sang about just now, that draws us and that we want to find out more? So the attraction of Jesus, I think, is important. So, as usual, I'm going to open it up for a few questions and comments and a bit of discussion together, and then we'll sing our next song. But just a couple of questions there, but you don't have to restrict them to these. In what ways would you like to see Jesus? Sir, we would like to see Jesus was the beginning. And it thought, is Jesus attractive today? And if so, in what way? So if I stop